In this video, I'm going to be giving you the exact blueprint for everything that you need to succeed in PPC on Amazon in 2024. This blueprint is going to cover the fundamental principles of advertising on Amazon, how to optimize your existing campaigns, how to create new campaigns, and how to launch new campaigns for new products, as well as a few bonuses at the end. So this document right here, I wish I had at the start of my PPC journey, because it would have saved hundreds of hours of blood, sweat and tears. So I'm going to be giving it to you, and I'm hoping you'll be able to find some value in it and be able to apply it into your business for immediate success. So my name's Jake, and I run an Amazon advertising agency called Evica Digital. We currently work with 7-figure Amazon brands, and we manage about 35 million in annual revenue. So that's a little introduction into me, and without further ado, let's just jump straight into the document and get into it. Okay, so let's just jump straight into it. So welcome to PPC Masterclass. This masterclass here is going to teach you how to think and operate like a true PPC ninja. PPC is arguably the most important aspect of selling on Amazon. If you don't have a robust system for managing your ad account, it's game over. So what we're going to be covering in this document here is, firstly, the founding principles of Amazon advertising. Then we're going to be looking at the common misconceptions about advertising on Amazon. After that, we'll be looking at campaign transcendence, so how you can actually optimize your existing campaigns. Following that, we'll be looking at campaign genesis, so how you can actually create the perfect new campaign. Followed by PPC mastery, which is basically your weekly and monthly cadence, so what you're going to be doing on a weekly and monthly basis. And then we finish off with important things that you must remember. So let's just quickly start off by a brief explanation of what PPC actually is. So PPC is pay-per-click advertising. It's an advertising model commonly used by Amazon. So you pay Amazon every time someone clicks on your ad. Gone are the days where you could just list a product, use no paid ads, and the product would take off to the moon. Unfortunately now, it's very difficult to rank a product organically without using some type of paid traffic. The most common one that sellers use is paying for sponsored ad placements on Amazon. So on Amazon.com, 80% of all the clicks come from page 1 of a search results page. And out of those 80% of clicks, 60% are linked to the top 3 products. So you need to be on page 1 for the relevant keywords that you have, and ideally in position 1, 2 or 3. Now, for most searches, the top 3 results are paid ads. So if you want to be seen at the top of the page, it's likely you're going to have to pay for it. So here's an example of the search query footrest. So you'll notice here that the first 4 results are paid placements. So if you look here, you'll see sponsored, 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 sponsored. So actually the first 4 placements at the top of the page, people are paying to be there. These aren't organic placements, these are paid placements, which really demonstrates how important it is to pay to be seen on Amazon, especially for keywords that are relevant to your products. So we've established 1, the majority of all clicks come from page 1. 2, a significant portion of those clicks go to the top 3 placements. And 3, for most searches, the top 3 placements are ones that you have to pay for. So I think you can see where we're going here. To compete on Amazon right now, you need to be paying to play. If you're not, you could be jeopardizing your sales. So founding principles. To understand how to build a PPC strategy custom to your brand, it's crucial to know the principles of advertising. So why do we actually advertise? Well, simply to show our product to more people. So advertising is paying to be seen, and good advertising is paying to be seen profitably. Advertising on Amazon is a simple equation. Show your product for the right keywords and use math and logic so you don't overspend. In this video, you're going to learn how to find the right keywords and what math is required to ensure that you're running ads profitably. So first thing, we need to look at what I consider the guiding principles to follow. So there are 4. 1, set a clear strategy. 2, systemize the process. 3, only test 1 variable at a time. And final one, 4, is remain calm and follow the data. So it's important here to be dispassionate when you're optimizing your campaigns. Some people get a little bit erratic and emotional. and majority of the time it's not worth it to act out of emotion. You just need to look at the data and follow the data. So interpreting the data in the right way is super important, and also keeping a level head. So I've included this image here. It just shows a boat sailing from America over to the UK. And it just demonstrates where having a plan helps you to get there a lot faster. So the green arrow denotes the guys that have the plan, and then the red arrow denotes the guys that don't have the plan. So both people are going to get there eventually, but the guy that does have the plan can set exactly where they're going, and they're going to get there a lot faster. So Polaris principles. All right, we've tackled what the fundamental principles of advertising are. Now let's relate them to advertising on Amazon, because ultimately that's what you guys are here for. How can you advertise on Amazon in a profitable way? So here are some of the most important principles and best practices to follow when thinking about PPC. So first one is use portfolio for your products. You can divide them into SKUs or ASINs, or on a product level. For example, if you have multiple variations of one product, you may want to include all of them in one portfolio. Now, this really does come down to preference, but the main thing is to make sure you're organising on a portfolio level. Now, this is one of the most fundamental things. If you can segment and organise by portfolio, it's going to make optimising your campaigns far, far easier. So point number 2, use a clear naming convention. So I always say that the best naming convention is one that's easy for you to understand. So you can use whatever is most easy or most easily accessible to you and is easy to remember. But the point is, you want to know exactly what that campaign is for, because especially if you have more than 10 campaigns, you're just simply not going to remember what each campaign is designed for. So a naming convention that I like is using the product identifier, then the ad type, then the campaign type, and where I got the keywords from. So for example, we have running shoes, sponsored product, exact, helium 10. So this naming convention here tells me everything that I need to know about the campaign. I can see what product we're targeting, what ad type it is, what match type it is, and exactly where I got the keywords from. So I know everything that is relevant to this campaign, I know just by looking at the campaign name. The third point is only using one ad group per campaign. Now, we're going to dive into this in more detail in a short moment, but this is also super, super important, right? So we can't control where Amazon distributes the spend if we have more than one ad group per campaign. Now, you'll realize a common thread in this video, and it's the more control we have over our keywords and our campaigns, the better. So having or using only one ad group per campaign is going to give us much more control. Number 4, limit the number of keywords in one ad group. So usually we don't like to have any more than 10 keywords in a campaign. Now it's important to bear in mind that all of the points that we're talking about now, I'm going to dive into much more detail shortly. But I just want to give you a quick overview of the main principles or best practices for advertising on Amazon. Then we've got point E, which is segmenting campaigns by intention. So for example, we want to have a campaign just for hyper-relevant keywords. We'll have another campaign that is for research campaigns. We have another campaign that includes only branded keywords. And then we have another campaign that only includes product targets. But we want to make sure that all of these different types of campaigns are being segmented. Point F. For keyword campaigns, we need to segment, or you should segment by search volume. So for example, we don't want to include a huge keyword with 100,000 monthly search volume in the same campaign with a keyword that only has 500 monthly searches. A good ratio is around 5:1, meaning a keyword that has 1,000 monthly searches can be placed with a keyword of 5,000 monthly searches. But we wouldn't place a keyword that has 1,000 monthly searches with a keyword that has 10,000 monthly searches. We'll explain this in greater detail, but the main idea is that the larger search volume keywords will tend to throttle the impressions and clicks that smaller lower search volume keywords will generate. And then the final point, just keep it simple. We want to have one product, one type of target, and one ad group. The more simple a campaign is, the much more easier it is to control. So the point is, just set a clear strategy and follow it. You're probably going to have many micro strategies within your meta strategy, your overarching strategy. But if you set a strategy, every action that you make, you can run through the lens of, does this action align with the strategy? So it's important to set clear intentions when you're creating campaigns. And it's also important to know and track your metrics. So as you've probably heard this many times, but what can be measured can be improved. And I am a huge proponent of that. And what I've done here is I've linked a Google Doc that has a good way of tracking keywords. It's just a way that I use just to track the data, not keywords, sorry, the data. So you can feel free to go ahead and just click on this link and load the spreadsheet up. It's entirely up to you. But if you have your own way of tracking the data, that's fine as well. I just thought this may be of value to some people. So the next thing that we're going to walk through is common misconceptions about PPC. So this is something that I ran into when I was first getting into PPC, and I know loads of people that fall into this category as well, making mistakes. So I'm hoping here you guys can read some of this and listen to this and learn from some of the mistakes that I've made, so you guys won't have to in the future. So the first one is PPC is set and forget. So a lot of people believe this. Now, don't fall into this trap. Things are always changing on Amazon. And if you're not monitoring and adjusting your campaigns on a regular basis, it's likely that you're leaving money on the table. Now, this doesn't just include bid optimization, but also keyword research, making negations, competitive research as well. So you know yourself that Amazon is always changing. It's so fast paced. And if we're not constantly going in, making changes, just trying to really stay ahead of the competition, then we are going to fall behind. Now, search intent always changes, or search behavior, always changes. And the algorithm for recommending searches as well changes, which can massively influence the search terms that we see in. So for example, if there's an update in the algorithm for recommending specific search queries, so let's say for example, we type in footrest into the search bar, Amazon's going to list a whole bunch of recommendations that we can search. And a lot of people, myself included, are lazy. So rather than actually typing out exactly what we want, we just go ahead and we just click on the recommendation. Now, if these recommended searches change, that can massively influence the search volume of particular search queries. So it's important to stay on top of that. Another common misconception is that your ACOS should be the same that it was back in 2018. Now, this is difficult to deal with, to be honest, because people look at the CPCs and the ACOS back in 2018, and they're like, well, why can't I achieve those results now? But a lot has changed since then. And even if you've improved your conversion rate since 2018, it's likely that you're going to have a higher ACOS now, and that's simply due to rising CPCs. There's no way around it, to be honest. It's getting more and more expensive to advertise on Amazon, and that is primarily why I'm creating this masterclass as well, because we need to be a little bit more sophisticated in our approach to advertising on Amazon now. Gone are the days where we can just throw up a few auto campaigns and we're going to have like a 5% ACOS or a 10% ACOS and make huge amounts of profit. We have to be a little bit more sophisticated, and yeah, that's really why we've created this masterclass, to be honest. So there's that. The third one is the number one position is the most profitable position. Now, I know earlier on in the video we mentioned that placing number 1, 2 or 3 is important. However, I'd like to make a little caveat here and say placing number 1 for most keywords usually isn't very profitable, or isn't as profitable as position 2, 3 and 4. Most people are bidding for position number 1, so naturally the CPCs there for that position are going to be higher. The way that Amazon's bidding system works is it's like an auction. So if multiple people are bidding, let's say $3 for a particular keyword, you're going to have to bid more than that in theory to place at number one. And if people are constantly bidding up and up and up to achieve position number one, then it's just going to mean that to actually achieve position number one, you just have to bid more. So usually what I've found is second, third, or even fourth actually are more profitable than number one. But again, this is something you have to test. This is just what I've noticed with dealing with my clients and speaking to other people in the space, that usually second, third and fourth is going to be a lot more profitable because people are still clicking on those, but you just pay a lot less to get there. So the next misconception is that Amazon's bid suggestions are always accurate. So they can be useful in some instances, but a lot of the time they're way off the mark. Now, we're going to be discussing better alternatives to following the bid suggestions here, but I always recommend, rather than just picking some arbitrary number or following the guidance of Amazon, which isn't always in your best interest, in my opinion, it's better to use strategic formulas that have mathematically sound calculations rather than just simply blindly following a suggestion that Amazon gives to you guys. So now that we've discussed the first principles of advertising on Amazon and what not to do, we can reason up from those principles and start actually building a framework to tackle the problems that you're facing with PPC. And that leads us to campaign transcendence, which sounds all cool, but it really is how we can better optimize your campaigns. So this is the cool part. This is where the theory meets action and we can actually start formulating our strategy. So here we're going to cover bid optimization, search term negations, target shutdown, so cutting off poor performing targets, placement modifiers, budget optimization, and restructuring campaigns. So now you should know why it's important to consistently be monitoring and adjusting your campaigns. So now we know this, let's dive into how we can actually go about doing this. And the logical place to start for me is with bid optimization. So bid optimization. The whole universe operates under the principle of cause and effect. And we shouldn't expect that bid optimization would be any different. So to address the ACOS, which is the effect, we must first address the cause, which is the bid. So how do we change the bid to influence the ACOS? When you see it like this, bid optimization actually becomes very easy. If we increase our bid, our ACOS will usually go up. I say usually because that's not always the case. However, if we decrease our bid, our ACOS will usually go down. So a higher bid creates a higher placement, which leads to a higher CPC, which usually gives us a higher ACOS. So it begs the question, how much do we actually increase or decrease our bid to achieve our target ACOS? Now, a lot of people just throw around arbitrary numbers like let's increase our bid by 10% or let's decrease our bid by 10%. But I actually think there's a more mathematical approach to bid optimization. And this is why I use formulas. So in most instances of PPC, the most simple answer to the problem is math. And in this case here, it's simply no different. So we can actually use a formula for bid optimization. We don't have to just guess. We can take all of the guesswork out of it and create a formula that is going to help us to achieve our target ACOS if we apply it right. So for the formula to work, we need two metrics. Revenue per click, which is a metric that I shamelessly stole from AdBadger. So shout out to you guys for that. So revenue per click is the revenue that was generated by a keyword divided by the number of clicks also generated by that keyword within the chosen time frame. So for me, I like 14 days, but you can use a time frame of 30 days, 7 days. It really doesn't matter about the time frame, as long as they are consistent in that the time frame for the revenue generated and the time frame that you choose for the clicks generated are the same. That's important that they're both the same. And then the second metric that we need to know is our target ACOS. So once we have those two metrics, it's very simple to use the formula. So the formula is revenue per click multiplied by our target ACOS, and that there will give us our ideal bid. So for example, if we have a keyword which is running shoes, and it's accumulated $300 in sales over the last 14 days and also generated 100 clicks in the same time frame, our revenue per click would be $3 for this keyword, because 300 divided by 100 gives us 3. Now, if our target ACOS is 30%, the formula would be $3 multiplied by 0.3, our 30%, which would give us a 90-cent ideal bid. So we would either be increasing or decreasing our bid depending on where the bid currently is. So obviously, if we're trying to lower our ACOS, let's say for example our ACOS for running shoes is 50%, then we're probably going to be decreasing our bid to get to this 90 cents ideal bid. However, if our ACOS for running shoes is below 30%, then we're going to be increasing it to get to that target ACOS. So as you can see here, we've got revenue per click multiplied by target ACOS. It's a very simple formula. The next thing that we're going to touch on is search term negations, so cutting out all the crap. So it's pretty easy to manipulate the ACOS for exact match keywords, but phrase, broad and auto are a little bit more difficult. And that's simply because one keyword can have thousands of different search terms represented by that keyword. So this is where keyword negations become important. So I've included this image here because when I'm making negations within a campaign, that's how I sort of imagine making the negations, that I'm pruning a plant, and what I'm doing is I'm getting rid of all the crap on the plant so that the leaves or the flowers can flourish and it can grow a lot better, and that's literally how I imagine making the search term negations. We're cutting out all of the bad search terms so that more spend is going to be allocated towards the performing search terms, which is going to generate more sales and hopefully a better ACOS. So I feel like we can draw some slight parallels between trimming a plant down and pruning a plant and pruning our campaign. So just like optimizing our bids here, we can use math to make our process for negating keywords systemized and simple, because that's what it's all about really. PPC is technical, but it doesn't have to be difficult. If we create processes for each activity, then we know this is what we need to do for X activity. And if we have the monthly and weekly cadence, we can see how often we need to do that as well. And that's what you're going to be getting in this video as well. So for this, negating keywords, we need to know 3 metrics. And that is our average conversion rate. So we can take that from our products tab in Campaign Manager. Now, in my opinion, that's probably the best place to take it from, because there are multiple ways that you can get your conversion rate. However, in my experience, I've found that this is the most accurate because we're optimizing our sponsored ads and not our organic. So typically paid placements will have a different conversion rate to organic. So I like to pull the conversion rate from the products tab in the Campaign Manager. The second metric is the average selling price of our product. So again, we can take this from our products tab in Campaign Manager. However, for most people, you'll know your average selling price anyway. And then the third metric is our target ACOS. So now we can set our click and spend thresholds. So thresholds are very unique to each business. So ultimately, it's going to depend on your goals and strategy. Now, some people are going to want to scale a lot faster, and they're happy to sacrifice a little bit of profit for that in order to grow fast. Some people are really going to be optimizing for profit and cash flow. In that case, they may be a little bit more conservative. However, with that being said, a good rule of thumb that I use is for spend, 50% of the average selling price or 50% above the target ACOS. So I'll give you an example here. In fact, we've got an example just below. But a good rule of thumb, again, part B, is 2 times the number of clicks usually required for a conversion. So that's for search terms that have generated clicks and no sales. So here's an example for A. We've got, if the average selling price is $20 and our target ACOS is 30%, we would negate any search terms that have generated between $9 and $10 without a sale. This would be between 50% above our target ACOS and 50% of our average selling price. So $10 is obviously half of our average selling price. And then $9 is 50% above our target ACOS, because our target ACOS is 30%. 50% above 30% is 45%. And 45% of $20 is $9. So example for B, we're referring to the clicks here. If our conversion rate is 10%, that means that every 10 clicks generates a sale in theory. So every 10 clicks or so, we know we're going to be generating a sale. So what I would do is negate a search term after 20 clicks and no sales. So that's double the clicks required for a 10% conversion rate. Now, of course, these are just rules of thumb. You can change the numbers in these formulas depending on your goals. But the most important thing here is to have a standardized rule that you can apply in every scenario. So you don't want to just be using your however you feel. Maybe today we're going to negate search terms that have generated 15 clicks without a sale. Next week, 25 clicks. You want to have a standardized process, a systematic approach to negating search terms. Otherwise, you're not going to be organized. It's going to be difficult. And as humans, if we find something difficult, we tend to avoid it. Okay, so we've looked at how we can optimize our bids for maximum performance. We've looked at how we go about negating search terms to bring our ACOS down further. Now, the next thing that we're going to look at is how to turn things off. So at what point do we say, okay, right, we're not going to continue trying to optimize the bids for ACOS, we're just going to turn it off. So bid optimization and keyword negations can only take us so far. Sometimes things need to get turned off. If we apply best practice to begin with, usually this isn't a problem. But however, in the case that we don't, it's good to have this here as a last resort. So here are 3 things to look out for. First one is keywords or product targets that have high clicks and or spend with 0 orders. Keywords or product targets with obscenely high ACOS, or ads that have high clicks or spend with 0 orders. So as a good rule of thumb, if a target or ad has generated spend that is worth 150% of your average selling price, then you want to turn it off. So for example, if we have a product that has an average selling price of $20 and a keyword that's targeting that product has generated $30 in spend with 0 sales, we would go ahead and turn that target off, because that's spent 50% more than the actual price of the product. Another rule of thumb here is if a target or ad has an ACOS that is 4x your target ACOS, then turn it off. So for example, if your target ACOS is 30% and a keyword has an ACOS of 120%, then you would turn that off. So you've heard me talking about ads and keywords or targets and whatnot. An ad is a product. So let's say, for example, we target in multiple products within a campaign. Let's just say we have like 3 variations of a specific product, and then these are color variations. So one's black, one's grey, and one's white. Let's say, for example, the white one that we're targeting within this campaign, that's been generating spend or clicks without any sales. That's when we turn it off. So when I talk about ads, that's what I'm referring to, the products. So as always, you must use your own discretion. Once something's been turned off, it usually takes a while to gain the momentum that it previously had. So my suggestion and what I usually do is I will only turn something off if I know it has really bad performance. And that's why I set these parameters here. So I consider that to be very bad performance, to the point where I'll probably just want to go ahead and turn it off. Now, if you're launching products, it can be different. We're going to talk about what we do when we're launching products, and we set different benchmarks for that. But yeah, you want to really set your own parameters and your own thresholds for what you consider to be too much in spend, to the point where you would just turn it off. But as we explained earlier, it's important to have these in place, these processes, so we can approach it in a systematic way, and we have consistency, which is the most important thing, and it just makes things a ton easier. So the next thing that we will discuss is placement modifiers. So using placement modifiers can be an extremely powerful tool to increase the sales and reduce the ACOS of your campaigns. Now, generally, keywords will perform best at the top of search. But as always, you have to follow the data. If you see that a product placements have a much better ACOS or ROAS, then you may want to increase the placement there. So generally speaking, what I've seen working with accounts and doing audits is top of search outperforms rest of search and product placements. However, there are occasions and there are situations and campaigns where the rest of search outperforms, or even product placement outperforms, and in that case you may want to go and adjust the placement modifier there. Essentially, you want to be following the data. As I said, don't just look at it and be emotional. You want to be rational and just follow the data, and whatever that says, let that inform your decision. So I don't recommend using placement modifiers for broad and auto campaigns. The reason being is that there are so many search terms that can be generated or produced by these type of campaigns. Simply adjusting the placements can significantly exacerbate the already underperforming search terms. So if we have underperforming search terms, then what's going to happen is if we're increasing the placement modifier, we're going to be spending more for those search terms depending on where they're placed on the page. I will add a slight caveat to this. If you have a well-pruned campaign, meaning the majority of the search terms within this campaign are performing and they're generating sales and a good ACOS, then you could probably go ahead and start making adjustments based on the data. But again, test this for yourself. I found that it works well for broad and auto campaigns that are well-pruned, as I just explained, meaning that they already have a lot of negations there in place. So it's not something that I would recommend for new auto campaigns or new broad campaigns, just because it's going to generate a lot of irrelevant search terms and things that just aren't going to convert. And as we explained, adding these placement modifiers is just going to worsen the problem. So what I do is test it incrementally, and then I evaluate the results and make the necessary adjustments. So I personally test with 30% increments. So for example, if I look in a campaign and I see that at the top of the search, we have a far better ACOS, it's just performing a lot better, then I'll increase that placement modifier by 30%. And then if I come back and I check and it's still performing well, then I might go ahead and increase it by another 30%. So these are the parameters that I set when looking at placement modifiers, and if any adjustments can be made on them. So first is time frame. So I want to be looking at the last 14 to 30 days. Now, I typically look at the last 14 days. However, if we don't have enough data for statistical significance, then I may look back 30 days in total. By statistical significance, I mean more than one order. Now, the more orders, of course, the better, but I won't typically make a decision if we only are looking at one order. So, for example, I'll show you this example in a moment, actually. And then number 3, better performance than other placements. So I'm only going to adjust the placement if it's showing to have better performance than the other 2 placements. So I'll increase that by, if all of these parameters have been met, then I'll increase the placement by 30% incrementally. So for example, if we started off at 0%, we would go from 0 to 30, then 30 to 60, then 60 to 90, and so on. And we'll just keep continuing until we achieve a point of diminishing returns, really. So in this image below, you'll find an example of where I would increase the placement modifier. So you can find the data for placements under the placements tab within your campaigns. But if you look here, you will see that for the top of search, we have 2 orders. So that meets the more than one order requirement. And also the ACOS is 17%. You'll notice that the product pages is 91% ACOS. So you'll see that top of search is massively outperforming the rest of search and the product pages. So what I would do here is I would go ahead and I would increase the top of search by 30% or 30% percentage points. So as you can see, it's got a better ACOS, more than one order equals increase the top of search placement modifier, and that is what we would do. So that's placement modifiers and how I adjust placement modifiers. The next thing that we're going to look at is budget optimization. So throw more fuel on the flame. So this is a very simple tactic, yet very important. If a campaign has a good ACOS, you don't want to limit its spend. If that's generating sales for you and it's profitable and you're at a point where you're happy with it in terms of ACOS, you just want to keep spending more and more. So you want to consistently be checking the budgets of performing campaigns and ensuring that they're sufficiently funded to last throughout the day. Now, to do this, it's pretty simple. The first thing that you want to do is open up Campaign Manager, then click on the Budgets tab, set the time frame to the last 14 days. Now, this is down to preference, but for me, I like 14 days. You can use 7 days, you can use 30 days, but for me, I like 14. Then the next thing that you want to do is filter by ACOS and then enter less than and whatever your target ACOS is. So let's use the example of 30% target ACOS. We would look for anything that's under 30% ACOS. Then we press go. In the average time in budget column, it's then going to tell you what percentage of the day your campaigns were running for. So any campaign that meets this criteria and it's not running for 100%, you want to increase the budget so that it's running 100% of the day. So there's an important distinction to make here. In my experience, when you increase the budgets, the campaign ACOS may raise by 1 to 2 percentage points. So for example, if a campaign has an 18% ACOS, if we increase the budget, it may go up to 19 or 20%. So it's important just to bear this in mind for any campaigns that are close to your target ACOS. If you have a target ACOS of 30% and you're increasing a campaign that has the budget of a campaign that has a 29 or 30% ACOS at the moment, I would just expect that to probably spill over a little bit above your target ACOS. So it's just important to bear in mind. On the other hand, if you have campaigns that have a high ACOS and the spend's getting out of hand, you can actually reduce the budgets of these campaigns until you have the ACOS under control. This is another way to control the account level ACOS and ensure that you're not wasting too much spend. Now, this is a bit more of an advanced technique. So what I would suggest doing first is just looking at the campaigns that have a good ACOS that you can increase the budgets for. But of course, if you're happy to go ahead and start messing with budgets for all campaigns, then by all means do that. So the next thing that we're looking at is restructuring campaigns, pulling apart and rebuilding. Now, to be honest, this strategy is a little more advanced, but it can be very effective if done correctly. Now, you can use this strategy for campaigns that are not following best practices. For example, campaigns that have too many keywords in, campaigns with more than one match type, or campaigns with more than one ad group. So the first one that we're going to look at is campaigns that have too many keywords in. So the problem with having too many keywords in one ad group is that some of the keywords are just going to perform better than others, and some will have higher search volume. So if you pair low search keywords with high search keywords, usually what's going to happen is the high search keywords are going to overshadow the low search keywords, and the low search keywords just won't get any impressions and clicks. The majority or all of the spend is going to be distributed towards the high traffic keywords, which is going to throttle the lower traffic ones. So this is quite easy to test actually. Just simply go into an ad group that has more than probably 10 keywords and check if all the keywords are getting impressions and clicks. If they're not, there's a good chance they're being throttled by the other keywords and would actually thrive in their own ad group with their own spend. So restructuring this type of campaign is fairly simple. The first thing that you want to do is set a 60-day time frame in your campaign. To be honest, any time frame will do, but the longer you have, the better, as you have more data. Next, you want to identify the keywords with little or no impressions. You want to note those keywords down and then use a search volume approximator to check the search volumes of the keywords. So you can use tools like Helium 10. They have a great tool inside there called Magnet, where you can analyze the keywords, and that's going to approximate the search volume for you. The next thing that you want to do is segment the keywords by search volume if necessary, so we don't run into the same problem with our new campaigns, because it's all good pulling out keywords from a campaign, But if we're going to take those keywords out, put them into a new campaign, and some of the keywords in there are high search and some are low search, the low search ones are just going to get throttled again, so we're going to run into the same problem. So that's why it's important to know roughly how much search volume each keyword has, so we can segment as such using that ratio of 5:1. So the next thing that you want to do is pause them in the existing campaign. So if they have low or no impressions, then you can just go ahead and pause them straight away because they're not generating any clicks and impressions. However, what I would say is if they are generating clicks, then I would suggest that this is what I do anyway. So I keep them running in that existing campaign. I also run them alongside in a separate campaign. And once the performance exceeds once the performance in the new campaign exceeds the performance in the old campaign, then I'll just go ahead and turn those off. So that's how I do it. I just sort of phase it out that way. But of course, if they aren't generating any clicks and impressions, you can just pause them straight away. So the next thing that you want to do is create a new campaign with those in. So obviously you're going to create multiple campaigns if there's a large number of keywords that you need to take out from this campaign that you're restructuring. But again, we use best practices, so between 5 and 10 keywords per campaign, and we make sure that they have a good 5:1 ratio, no more than that, so no low search keywords are getting throttled. So that's how you do that. The next one that we're going to look at is campaigns that have more than one match type within them. So mixed match types within an ad group or campaign can make things very messy. Now, you'll notice common theme in this video. The more simple things are, the more organized things are, the easier it is to control. So if we can, it's a good idea to keep match types separate and segmented. Different match types will have different CPCs and bid strategies, so simply piling them all into one campaign is just not a good idea. So the steps to take in this instance are, again, we want to set a 60-day time frame in your campaign. Any time frame is going to do, but the longer the better. Identify the best performing match type. So the best performing match type is going to be the match type that has the most sales and the best ACOS. So for example, let's say that phrase has generated 20 sales in the last 60 days with a 15% ACOS, and our target ACOS is 30%. And then exact has generated 20 sales as well, but it has a 40% ACOS. And broad has generated 10 sales and it has a 30% ACOS or 40% ACOS, then we know that phrase is the best match type. So the next thing that we want to do is note down all the other keywords and their match types, and we of course want to segment. So we don't want to note down the exact and broad together. We want to note them down separately, segmented, because when we create the new campaigns, we're going to create them with separate match types. Again, we'll use another search volume approximator to check the search volumes of the keywords. We want to segment the keywords by search volume if necessary. We pause them in the existing campaign. However, if they're generating clicks, as we explained above, what we want to do is run them alongside each other. And then we create the new campaigns with these keywords in. So I want to make something very, very clear, and I think this is super important. So I've highlighted it in red actually, and that's why, because I really want to bring your attention to this point here. Keep the keywords in that have good performance no matter their match type. I'm going to actually put this in capitals because it's so important. So keywords that have a good ACOS. No, let's go back to this point actually, right? Because I really want to draw this in how important it actually is. So we don't know how a keyword is going to perform when we replicate that or we duplicate that and put it into a new campaign. So we don't want to pause this here, even if it's not the match type that we're keeping in that campaign, because the performance that we are getting in this campaign isn't necessarily going to transfer over to the new campaign. So let's say, for example, we know we're going to keep in phrase match keywords in our campaign and segment out everything else. If there is an exact match type keyword in that campaign that's performing super well, don't pause it, keep it running. Because chances are we're not going to get the same performance in the new campaign, so just keep it running. I just want to stress that best practices are best practices, but it's not a perfect model. If things are performing well and they're not following best practices, then still keep them running, okay? But best practices are just good to know for when you're creating new campaigns. So I just want to make a clear distinction there. If there are keywords that have good performance, just don't pause them, don't turn them off, okay? And the same goes for search terms as well. Never negate a good search term. A lot of people talk about this, and they talk about harvesting keywords or harvesting search terms and saying, if we have good performance, then let's transfer it over into a new campaign and we'll achieve the same thing. But in my experience, I've never found that to be the case, and I know a lot of people in the industry that talk about the same thing and they've seen the same thing. So never negate a good keyword or search term. So for moving on, for keywords that have a good ACOS, you can either just keep them in the existing campaign or put them in a new campaign and run them together. Then if the one in the new segmented campaign begins to outperform the other, you can pause the other. It's that simple. So that's what we do there. Moving on to campaigns with more than one ad group. So the problem with having campaigns that have more than one ad group is that you're just going to relinquish some of the control that you have over the campaign. It's that simple. Amazon chooses where the spend gets distributed between the ad groups. So even if you know that the ad group is a better performing one than the other, it doesn't matter if Amazon decides to allocate more spend to the other. So another downside is that if one of the ad groups' performance is suboptimal, it's going to hurt the overall quality score of the campaign. So this is going to lead to higher CPCs across the whole campaign and it's going to hurt the overall ACOS. So if we have 2 or more ad groups within a campaign and we have one ad group that's just not performing well, then what's going to happen is the overall quality score that's assigned to that campaign is going to go down, meaning that it's going to affect or infect all of the keywords within that campaign. It's going to lead to higher CPCs for all keywords, and we know that higher CPCs means a higher ACOS if everything else stays the same in terms of conversion rate, click-through rate, etc. So the steps that we can take to eliminate this is, again, set the 60-day time frame. We want to identify the best performing ad group. So this is the ad group that has the most sales and the best ACOS. The next thing that we want to do is copy and paste the underperforming ad group into a new campaign. So that means we want to take all of the keywords within these ad groups and we want to create new ad groups in new campaigns. So remember, 1 ad group per campaign. The next thing that we're going to do is go into the ad groups that we're turning off and pause any or segmenting out and pause any underperforming / non-performing keywords in the ad group. Let's change that there. That says campaign, but I mean to say ad group. So you need to keep an eye on any performing keywords or keep on any performing keywords within the underperforming campaign. Remember, we don't want to turn off any keywords or targets that are performing well. We always remember that. So yeah, you just don't want to turn it off. So you keep that running. Then the next thing that you're going to do is run the keyword against the same keyword within the new campaign. If the new campaign keyword outperforms the other, you can now pause that. But we don't pause that straight away. We want to make sure that the keyword within the new campaign is outperforming it first. So we spoke about it before, but I just want to really drill that in. Above all, never turn off a good keyword. If it doesn't fall within the best practices, it just doesn't matter. Best practices are good as a guide, and you should always follow them when launching new campaigns, but they're not the be-all and end-all. A good keyword will override whatever we would consider to be best practice. So yeah, it's so vital that you just don't go ahead and turn off performing keywords and search terms. Even if it doesn't fall within what we're considering as best practice, you're just going to have to let it run. Important note here, restructuring campaigns is a scaling activity, so you must expect to spend more when you're restructuring campaigns. That's another important thing to note. So when I'm talking with clients and we're talking about how we're going to start restructuring campaigns, I always let them know that they should expect the spend to go up, because When we're pulling out these keywords that are being throttled and have no impressions and clicks, and giving them their own breathing space and budget spend, they're going to start spending. So that's going to lead to an increase in spend. So it's going to lead to an increase in spend, but also an increase in sales as well, which is an important note to make. So campaign genesis. This is creation of new campaigns. Now, there are two types of campaign launches, and each type requires a different strategy. So the two types are launching new campaigns for existing products or established products, and launching new campaigns for new products. So remember, when launching new campaigns, always follow the best practices. So I've put the best practices here, we'll highlight them. So using your campaign nomenclature, only having one ad group per campaign, only having one match type per campaign. Remember to not have too many keywords within the ad group, and make sure that the keywords are segmented by search volume and intention. So we've discussed the best practices before. They are above. They'll also be in another document that I'm going to be providing with you guys at the end of the video. So yeah, best practices. I know I keep talking about it, but when we're creating new campaigns, we should always follow best practices. So launching new campaigns for existing products. Now, to be honest, it's much easier to launch new campaigns for existing products because we already have reviews. So we have the historical data, and we're usually already indexed for most of the relevant keywords. So the algorithm knows exactly what our product is. We can be less careful with testing out new keywords and product targets because of this. So yeah, it's just a lot easier because we already have the data there for most of the keywords. So we know what our average conversion rate is. We can make we can be a lot more precise with our targeting and the way we approach the campaign launch. So assuming that you already have the keywords that you're going to be targeting, again, we want to apply best practices to creating the campaign. Then when it comes to setting the bids, we want to use a logic-based approach rather than just setting some arbitrary bid or using Amazon's recommended bid, which can sometimes be wildly inaccurate. Now, you guys have probably seen this yourself. Some of the bids that I've looked at, some of the suggested bids by Amazon have been so far off the mark, and it's like, if you're going to go ahead and start setting those based on the recommendations, you could be overspending by so much. So this is the formula that I like to use to set bids in a way that should provide us with our target ACOS. Now, I use the word should because ultimately we never know how the market is going to treat this. So we just want to use our best estimations to create a bid that we think will be reasonable. And then we set it, we leave time to review, we review it, and then we make iteration based on what we find. So in order to use the formula, because we always use formulas, we use a mathematical approach, we need to know three metrics. So number one, the average selling price of our product. Number two, the average conversion rate for our product. And number three, our target ACOS. So for example, if we have a product that has a $30 average selling price, it has a 10% conversion rate and a 30% target ACOS, the formula is average selling price multiplied by conversion rate multiplied by target ACOS. So in our example, it would be 30 multiplied by 0.1 multiplied by 0.3, which will give us our 90-cent starting bid. So we're going to set the starting bid at 90 cents because in theory, it's going to take us 10 clicks to achieve a sale with a 10% conversion rate. So that would mean that we're going to spend $9 to achieve a sale because 10 clicks times 90 cents equals $9. And then $9 for a sale of 30 will give us an ACOS of 30%, sorry. So if you want to bid more aggressively, you can just set the bid 10% above your ideal bid. So in this example, that would be 99 cents. On the other hand, if you want to bid more conservatively, you can just reduce the ideal bid or the starting bid by 10%. So again, in this example where our starting bid's 90 cents, we'll just bid 81 cents. Then that's probably going to give us a slightly lower ACOS than our target ACOS. So that's how you set your starting bid. Now you have the perfect campaign structure and a starting bid that's mathematically sound for the ACOS that you want to achieve. So we can just take all of the guesswork out of optimizing our campaigns. We know how the perfect campaign structure should be. We know how to bid. We know how to optimize our bids. Now let's look at bidding strategies. So for bidding strategies, I suggest starting with down only for your bidding strategy. So this means that you'll never pay more than your bid for a click. So provided that you're not using any placement modifiers, of course. However, if you're not getting any traction after a few days of the campaign being launched, I changed the bidding strategy to fixed bids. Now let's take a look at how we go about launching new campaigns, but for new products. So launching new campaigns for a new product is a little bit more tricky because we have less data. So it makes it more difficult to ascertain a sound starting bid. So if we get this wrong, we can massively overspend. Or on the other hand, we can massively underspend and jeopardize our honeymoon period, which is obviously not good as well. So as always, we want to start by using the campaign setup best practices. Never deviate from this. We've gone through this several times now, so hopefully it should be drilled into your head. You're probably sick of hearing it. But you must remember that launching campaigns for a new product is vastly different from launching campaigns for an established product. You've got to expect a higher ACOS for the first 2 to 3 months. So it's essential to budget for this. Now you're going to have a higher ACOS because you're going to have a lower conversion rate. So more people are going to be clicking on the ad, but less people are going to be converting because of the reviews, because it's new, there's less social proof, etc. So I've seen clients have a 100% TACOS. So TACO's total ACOS is ad spend over total sales for the first month. So for example, if they're doing 2,000, if they generated 2,000 in total sales, they're spending 2,000 on their actual advertising. So you don't have to be that aggressive, but the more aggressive you are, the higher the likelihood of success for the launch. So there are 3 main reasons for the disparity in results for new products versus established ones. Add that S in there. So number 1, you have no reviews, so you're obviously going to have a much lower conversion rate. Number 2, you have your cost per clicks may be higher because Amazon rewards good historical performance, which you currently don't have, as you don't have any historical performance. And then point 3, you have no/very little data to inform your strategy. So you are almost, in some cases you're guessing, in some cases you're using a good estimate, but that's the best we can do really. So therefore you need to view these campaigns in a different lens. So these campaigns initially will have more wasted spend, a higher ACOS and a lower conversion rate and click-through rate. So you need to be more clinical when devising a plan, as you don't want to hurt your honeymoon period during the initial launch. Now the honeymoon period is super crucial. This is, for those who don't know, the first really, I want to say 3 to 4 weeks where Amazon gives you a little boost for being a new product. There's a lot more behind it than that. For example, you don't have any historical performance, so you don't have any negative historical performance. So if you're able to boost your sales in the first few days, then all Amazon's seeing is you're getting a lot of sales, which can positively impact for those 3 to 4 weeks. But the main idea is that you get a bit of a boost for those 3 to 4 weeks. So you really want to maximize those 3 to 4 weeks really. So to begin, you have to understand what you're trying to achieve with these campaigns, which is sales velocity, so you can gain reviews, send positive signals to Amazon, and cash flow, so you can purchase more products or whatever the cash flow is for. That's up to you. That's a business decision. And then secondly, indexing. So you want to let Amazon know exactly what your product is, so it can start to serve your product to the right customers, because it's crucial that Amazon understands exactly what your product is, so it can actually start serving you to the right people who are actually searching for your product. Otherwise, if your product's getting served for customers that don't want to buy your product and they're not even searching for anything similar to your product, that's going to lead to lower click-through rates, lower conversion rates, and that's going to send the wrong signals to Amazon, which is not good, especially during your honeymoon period. So with this in mind, your launch strategy is going to be very different from any other campaign launch. So you only want to target the most relevant keywords to begin with, because these are going to give you the highest click-through rates and conversion rates and help Amazon to index you for the most relevant keywords. So as I said, we want to be sending the right signals to Amazon, positive metrics, so high click-through rates, high conversion rates, Amazon's going to look at this and say, wow, this product has a high conversion rate relative to its competitors. We're going to show this to more people, because ultimately they want to better the experience for the customer. So if they can send better products to the customer and show better products to the customer, they're going to do that. And one way for them to discern whether a product is better is by using metrics like click-through rate and conversion rate. And also, you want to help Amazon index you for the most relevant keywords, so it can start to build a relevancy web and actually understand what your product is. So for the launch, you want to target long tail, super relevant keywords, lower search volume keywords, and products that are similar but somehow you have a competitive edge over them. So for example, you have a USP, you're selling it for a much lower price than they currently are, and things like that. But things where you know you can outcompete on them and potentially scoop a sale from them. So you don't want to be competing on generic keywords and high search volume keywords to begin with, in my opinion. If you have a large budget, then you may want to go ahead and start targeting some of the higher search volume keywords. But I also don't believe that you should be targeting generic keywords just because of the whole relevancy and indexing aspect. But the point is, unless you have a big, massive budget to sustain it, you will lose to the competition when you are first starting out and you have no reviews. So the first thing that we're going to look at is how we go about setting a budget for the new launch. So you want to set aside a large enough budget to support the launch comfortably. As we discussed earlier, this comes down to how aggressive you want to be in the launch. So if you want to go super aggressive and really push for scale and increase the likelihood that this launch is going to be successful, then you may go a little bit higher with your budget. If you want to be a little bit more conservative, you may have a slightly lower budget. But for the budget, one, you need to use a tool to estimate your sales. And then two, you need to take take a percentage of those sales as your monthly budget. Let me change that. I don't know why that says that. Take a percentage of those sales as your monthly budget. So what I've found is really you want to be spending about 30 to 100% of sales. So if we're spending, for example, if we're generating 2,000 in sales, 30% would leave us at $600 in ad spend. 100% would be 2,000. So somewhere around that range of 30 to 100% of the sales. So using a tool to estimate the sales, the first thing that you need to do is approximate your sales, of course. So here are the steps that I use to find a rough average of how many sales you can expect to be making in the first month. So firstly, you need to find the top 10 competitors to the product that you're launching. Second, you want to use an approximation tool like Helium 10 or Jungle Scout, and that's going to estimate how much revenue these 10 competitors are generating per month. Third, you want to take the average of the seller's monthly sales. This is going to give you a rough estimate of how much you can sell. And then finally, number 4, if there are any outlier sellers, then I would suggest using the median of the 10 sales and not the average. So I'm going to draw a distinction between the median and the average in a minute when we show you these examples. Circling back on point number 1, finding the 10 competitors, you want to make sure that the competitors are very similar to the product that you're selling. And then I would suggest also excluding any ones that have large branding. So for the competitors that you choose, if you notice that one product in particular has a very good brand and they're driving a lot of sales externally or through their branding, then you don't want to include those guys, because realistically you're probably not going to be able to compete with them. So moving back to using the distinction between using the median and the average, I'm going to show you an example of where I use the average versus where I use the median to calculate how many sales we can expect to generate in the first month. So as you can see here, we've got the 10 sellers and we've got the amount of sales that they generate per month. Let's imagine that we've taken this data from one of those tools such as Helium 10 or Jungle Scout. As you can see, the average, if we say the average, is 25,900 per month, and the median is 23,250. So notice how there isn't much disparity between the two numbers because there are no outliers here. So we can just go ahead and use the average or the median. It doesn't really matter, to be honest, but I I personally use the average. Now I'm going to show you an example of where I would use the median. So as you can see here, we've got all of the sellers. We've got 10 sellers and their estimates. Now I'm going to show you here. So this seller 8 has generated 500 in 1 month. Seller 6 has generated 200,000. You see the difference here between the sellers. There's so much disparity between the 200,000 per month, and then we've got 500 a month, and then like 20,000. So in this case, because we notice there are a few outliers, we want to use the median. So if we were to use the average, we would estimate that we're going to generate 51,750 in sales. Whereas if we use the median, we are going to estimate 28,000. You see how much of a difference there is between the average and the median in this case, and that's why I use the median, because it usually gives us a more accurate representation of how many sales we could expect to generate in the first month. So the average here is heavily skewed by the outlier sellers. Now realistically, the median will represent a closer estimation of your sales. So now you have an estimate of how much you'll generate per month with your new product. What you want to do is take a percentage of that for your monthly budget. Again, typically between 30 and 100%, depending on your personal budget and how fast you want to scale. So in this example here, if we've got 28,000, so if we estimate that we're going to generate 28,000 in sales, if we take a budget of 50%, that would mean we need to set aside 14,000 for the first month. And we can distribute that amongst the campaigns. So if we have 10 campaigns, maybe we go 1,400 in monthly spend across the 10 campaigns each. But yeah, that's how we set it. So the next thing that we need to look at is how we go about estimating our bids. For starting bids, it can be a little bit more tricky as we don't have the data to work with. We don't know our conversion rate. So we can't use the formula that we would use for established products. But we can take a model that's used in statistics, which is what I use, and it's known as the Bayesian model. So some of you are probably familiar with this, but if you're not, this model is useful for estimating and adjusting your bid without prior knowledge. So this is exactly how it works. So the first thing that you want to do is start with an initial bid. So this could be based on similar products that you're currently selling, or just a completely an estimate. So for example, a 5% conversion rate for products below this is the example that I use, sorry. So if you're going to estimate, what I would suggest is products that are below $50, we assume that we have a conversion rate of 5%. Products that sell for between $50 and $100, we assume that it's going to have a 2% conversion rate. And products that are selling above $100, we're going to assume that it has a 1% conversion rate. So these are a few benchmarks that I use if I don't have any prior data. The second part of the Bayesian model is we collect data. We then use that collected data to update our initial beliefs, and then based on that, we adjust our bids and make iterations. So for example, if we estimate that a keyword would have a 10% conversion rate and our selling price is $20 and our target ACOS is 60%, our ideal bid would be this: 20, our average selling price, multiplied by our conversion rate multiplied by our target ACOS. So notice here how we're using the same formula. We're still using the average selling price multiplied by conversion rate multiplied by target ACOS, and I'll actually include that here. So we'll go ASP multiplied by CBR multiplied by ACOS. We'll put that in bold because it's important. So that's going to give us a starting bid of $1.20. Now, in my experience, this is the best model that I've found currently to approximate starting bids, to be honest, when we don't have any prior data. I stole it from statistics, of course, obviously, but it's worked very well for me and my clients. And then we set the starting bid. And then as you can see, now you have the data and your conversion rate is actually 15%. So we can update our bid based on this new data. So you see how it works. So we set a starting bid, then we'll give it sufficient time. So we'll give it like 3 days. We will review the data. We'll check our conversion rate. If our conversion rate is 10%, then brilliant. We keep the bid as it is. If it's higher, we maybe reduce the bid. If it's lower, we can increase the bid. But we're just making iterations based on what we see based on the data. So the new formula would be 20 multiplied by our 0.15 conversion rate multiplied by 0.6 target ACOS, which would mean that our starting bid would actually be 1.8. So this method will be more accurate if you're already selling a similar product as well, because you can base your approximate conversion rate from that. So for example, if you're selling a similar product that has a 10% conversion rate, you can assume that the conversion rate for your new product is going to be about 5% or slightly lower. So typically, what I've found anyway is that new products will have a conversion rate that's about 50% what it is when it's established. So in this example that we're using here, a product that has an established product that has a 10% conversion rate is probably going to have a conversion rate when brand new with no or minimal reviews of 5% or maybe even a little bit lower. So it's important to set bids as fixed for when you're launching. Down only doesn't always work, because sometimes Amazon will consider your bid as not being competitive enough, and that could lead to little impressions. So up and down bids can also get really expensive, especially with aggressive high bids and low conversion rates. So you need to be careful there, and that's why I always recommend, I always follow using fixed bids. So after about between 2 and 4 days of the launch, what you want to do is check your suggested keywords. So you can find this by creating a new campaign, and in the keyword section, just look at what Amazon's suggesting in your keyword area. So if the keywords that they're suggesting are relevant to your product, this means that you've been well indexed for the product. So Amazon is now mapping keywords to your product that are actually relevant keywords. So that means that you can start to launch auto campaigns as well, because Amazon now has a better idea of what your product actually is. So remember, we always have one match type per campaign, and this also applies to auto campaigns. So what I usually do is start with close match first, because these are going to produce the most relevant keywords to our product. So that's how we go about launching campaigns for new products. Now let's go into PPC mastery. So by now you should be an absolute monster when it comes to understanding the logic and practical aspects of creating and optimizing your campaigns. So this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, which is our workflow. So in this section, you're going to learn how often that you need to make adjustments, or you should make adjustments. So we have two things. There's weekly cadence and there's monthly cadence. So what we'll be doing on a weekly basis will differ slightly from what we do on a monthly basis. So weekly cadence is bid optimization. So this should be done between 1 and 2 times per week. Keyword negations, which should also be done between 1 and 2 times per week. Budget optimizations, again, this should be done between 1 and 2 times per week. Now, on a monthly basis, what we want to be doing is keyword research, restructuring campaigns, and remember, this is a scaling activity, so it can lead to a lot of additional spend if you're doing a lot of restructuring work. So what I like to do is limit it to once per month, especially if your budget is restricted. So the next thing that you'll look at is testing new strategies and campaign types. So in my opinion, you should always be testing new things just to stay ahead of the competition, really. And that's why it's important just to be doing this on a regular basis. Another thing is testing old keywords that didn't perform previously. So sometimes, for whatever reason, the keywords that previously didn't perform well may perform well when you retest them. So for example, if you launch a new product, certain keywords aren't going to work when you've only got 1 or 2 or just low reviews. However, when you have 50, 100 reviews, you start to build some more social proof, those keywords may actually start to perform. So that's just one example of where keywords that previously didn't perform well may perform well in the future, and that's why it's good to always recycle through these keywords and retest them. And then the final thing is to fill out your tracker on a bi-weekly basis. So twice a month, once every 2 weeks, so you can measure the results. Remember, what can be measured can be improved. So yeah, that's everything. Remember, you don't need fancy software and spreadsheets. Just need an understanding of the fundamentals and a process that you can follow. So the most advanced PPCers that I know are the ones that just follow the basics, but on a consistent basis. And below you'll find a PPC cheat sheet. So that's going to provide all of the action items really that we've spoken about in this video. So yeah, if you want to look at the PPC cheat sheet, you just click on this link here, and that's going to load up a separate Google Doc, and that's just going to provide you with sort of a roadmap or just the action items really. So anything that is action oriented will be included in this document here. But yeah, that's everything for this Google Doc. I hope you took some value from it. And yeah, that's it. Thank you. So yeah, that's everything for the video. Thank you for staying till the end. I hope you took a load of value from it. And if you did, please consider subscribing. Now, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about the systems that we use for our brands, there is a link below. Now, full transparency, it will lead you to a VSL. I will be trying to sell you something. So if you don't want to be sold, then just don't click on the link. But if you are open to exploring new options, then go ahead and click the link. But there's no stress if not. But yeah, that's everything for this video. Thank you for staying till the end. And I hope to see you in the next one. Thank you. Take care.